Hey, what is up guys? My name is Stan and welcome back to the channel. So this is a little bit different here. I am back home at my parents' place for the holidays, and one thing I noticed was the computer that they had was getting really old. It's probably getting up to 10, 12 years old at this point. And I decided that it was time for a little upgrade. So what I've got here are some components, pieces, and parts for a build for the family, and mainly this is a productivity computer. So we're talking about low, mid-budget, low budget, entry-level computer. So the main problem with building a computer these days is the parts are really hard to find. Everywhere sold out, especially 2020, right? So I ran off to Microcenter and picked up a bunch of computer parts here, as you can see. And considering that it's a low budget computer, I went with a bunch of open box items. Kind of gonna be rolling the dice here to see what happens, but just to run through the parts here, I've got a NZXT H210i, or no, just the regular non-I version, so this is the non-RGB version. Again, this is an open box. I don't actually know what the condition is on the inside. We'll find out together. With that, I've got a Ryzen 3 3200G. It's got the integrated graphics inside of it. So as you can see probably here, we don't have a graphics card. And the reason why I went with this was because it had the integrated graphics and it's a little bit more powerful than Intel's offering at the moment. There is a 4700G 4000 series, but that's only available to system integrators. You can't get your hands on it. And quite honestly, you just can't get any other processor right now. You can't get, ideally it would be nice to get a 3600X, or sorry, 5600X, the brand new 5000 series, but of course, everywhere sold out. So I was actually pretty lucky to even get my hands on this right here for actually MSRP. And this was the last CPU in the store at Microcenter. So I'm actually pretty happy I got my hands on that. So next, I've got the motherboard. This is the ROG Strix B550 Gaming Mini ITX board. This is an amazing board. It's got a lot of capabilities. As you can see with the yellow sticker, it's also open box. This doesn't really match the CPU, but it allows for a very good upgrade path. If I wanted to throw in a 5600X, 5900X, whatever, it'll go good with this board. So I kind of want to open the door for future upgrades. So that's why I went with something a little bit more expensive, almost as expensive as the processor. Now, some other parts, I've got memory. This is just LPX Vengeance LPX, Corsair, and then I've also got a Evo 970 non-plus version. Just didn't think that it was necessary to go with the plus, and also open box. So again, I have no idea why some of these products were returned, but we'll find out together. Now again, this is the NZXT H210. This is a mini ITX computer, and just judging from what I'm seeing right here, it was probably a pretty good choice to go with the open box, because you can see here the plastic is still unpeeled. So basically the previous owner probably never built in this thing and just decided that this case wasn't for him. He probably wanted the I version with all the LEDs and whatever, so ended up returning it. So it looks like visibly there's really no damage at all, and from the inside here there's a box with all the screws and all the extra little things are all intact. So this looks to be a pretty good buy. Next up is the ROG Strix Gaming. This usually MSRPs for about $229, and certainly I think when we checked on Amazon, it actually goes for that kind of price. This I got for only $183, so that's almost a $50 saving for an open box like this. I don't know the history behind this item. Certainly when I looked at the motherboard and everything, it looked pretty complete. And as you can see, everything's wrapped up pretty well here. Judging from the accessories, there's probably one of two things might have happened. So I've got the full IO shield wrapped up, meaning that it was never actually used or built in. Option 2 could have been something that was sent back to ASUS and it was repaired and it was sent back to Microcenter for resale as a refurbished item, thus the returned item. That's a possibility, but I don't think that this is the case. This is probably just a return of a unused motherboard. So $50 off, I'll roll the dice, see if it's okay. You know, we'll find out together, like I said. Next I've got right here, this is the last open box item that I purchased. This is the Samsung 970 EVO. 970 EVO has been around for 2-3 years now. But you know, they're still as good as ever, and they're still a go-to. There is a newer 970 EVO Plus, just to keep costs down, went with the regular 970 EVO. This right here, this is the EVGA 650BQ. This is kind of an entry-level power supply here, and you can see this is they're kind of semi-modular, meaning you've got some cables already attached and some cables you can plug in. Last but not least is the CPU. This is the Ryzen 3 3200G CPU. The reason why I went with Ryzen was because of the graphics capabilities, the APU. All right, okay, so actually there's a quick change of plans here. Instead of me building the computer, I've actually got my dad right here, and he's gonna be the one building the computer. So just a quick little montage of him building this computer. We'll see how this goes. so this is now the moment of truth. I've got it all hooked up and we'll see what happens. This is kind of where you're just holding your breath to see if this thing will power on. We got power. Oh, there you go. Hey, it works. Kind of. Let's see. 970 detected. All the memories detected. 16 gigs. B550 with a Ryzen 3 3200G. So, hey, there you go. All right, so I'm gonna update the firmware, install the drivers, or actually install Windows and then the drivers. So I'm not gonna bore you guys to death. I'm gonna do that. I'll be right back. All right, so what I've got here is the applications here. I've got Samsung Magician, as well as System Profiler. I've got, you can see here, it's a Ryzen 3 3200G at 3.6 gigahertz. The processor, in my experience, I've seen boosts up to about 3.7 on all cores and a max of about 4 gigahertz on a single core. So all well within line of what we expect. As for the Samsung Evo 970, if you recall, this was a open box item. So you can see here, this has about 600 gigabytes of data written to it already. I think I did about 100 Gs already. So meaning by the time it got into my hands, it had already done 500 gigs. Most likely the previous owner wrote some stuff to it and then zeroed out the drive, or wiped the drive. That's why you got that 500 gigs written. 500 gigs written, total written, it means it's actually still a relatively new drive, so I don't expect any problems here. And basically, the experience of using this computer is really good. It's very snappy. The applications work very well, very quick. So it's mainly because of that SSD again, because you can see here the SSD sequential read writes over 2 gigs, 3 gigs of read and write, and then 200K, 250K worth of IOPS as expected from a 970 Evo. So yeah, I would say that this build right here is a pretty good success for about $650. I think that's what I spent on all the components here. Very entry-level productivity computer with a handful of open box items. Ended up being pretty stable and no problems. The motherboard is stable, the case had no significant damages to it, and the SSD turned out pretty good. Now, one word of caution is if you are actually looking at buying open box items, you kind of want to make sure that, or be aware of what may be potentially wrong if you're buying it. For example, would I buy a power supply, an open box power supply? Probably it's okay, but then you're kind of rolling the dice on potentially a faulty power supply and it shuts down, or loud, clicking noises. I kind of didn't want to deal with that, so I didn't bother buying an open box power supply. Or memory, for example. Memory I think is actually a pretty safe bet. If you want to purchase an open box memory, just make sure that you run memtest on it, or that you might be saving yourself a bunch of headache down the road. Last but not least, I'll be making a separate video on this case and my thoughts about this case. And also I'll make a separate video about the motherboard and why I chose that motherboard. So if you want to see those videos, make sure to subscribe or keep an eye out for those videos. And if this video was useful for you guys, or you enjoyed watching it, make sure to hit that like button and perhaps comment down below if you recently purchased or built a system, or your difficulties getting components to build a system. Anyway, my name is Stan. I'll see you guys in the next one.